Does Ash know? No, and he mustn't. Who exactly is Ash Ketchum's dad? Why did he disappear from Ash and Delia's life? Where is he now? And is he ever coming back? It's time to begin the search for the truth. Hey everyone, it's Charles. How are you? Ever since episode 1, Pokemon, I Choose You, wherein Ash was first depicted as a young boy growing up with his mother, Delia, Ash's father has never been part of the picture. Over the course of the anime in its entirety, the whereabouts of Ash's dad or what exactly happened to him are a mystery. It's suggested early on that he went off on his own Pokemon journey, but getting any leads on the man is like trying to catch dandelion seeds with a toothpick. However, there have been subtle hints here and there, not to mention details locked in Japanese materials that never made it overseas. Hints and details which may indicate the true nature of Ash's father. Today we're going to dust off the clues and pick up the trail, so grab your popcorn, TM28, that like button for the YouTube algorithm, and enjoy. Now, we can't have a serious discussion about the identity of Ash's father without addressing the most popular theories that have been circulating the internet for years. Some of them are totally laughable, some of them hold a fair bit of weight, and one of them is true. Let's proceed knocking off the weaker theories before we jump into the real meat. But firstly, it must be established what concrete traces of Ash's dad actually can be found in the anime. Honestly, not very many, but just enough to verify his existence and some important information about him. Most notably, when Ash arrives at Viridian City early in the anime, he has a video call with his mum to update her on his progress. She's excited to hear from him and she's impressed that he's gotten there so quickly, and she says, "It took your father 4 days to get there when he started Pokemon training. Oh, he'll be so proud. You're the apple of his eye." Or at least, that's what she says in the English dub of the anime, heavily implying that 1. Ash's father departed and is perhaps still out there on his Pokemon journey somewhere. 2. That he's going to be proud of Ash's achievement, and thus we can infer he is likely to receive word of it. And 3. That he loves Ash dearly, that Ash is the apple of his eye. Seeing as these 3 inferences are often referenced in theories about Ash's dad, I thought it is time to point out that the original Japanese script is actually quite different. It took your father 4 days to get there when he started Pokemon training. Oh, he'll be so proud. You're the apple of his eye. In Japanese, Hanako, Delia, actually says, "Papa no toki wa Tokiwashi City ni iku made maru 4日もかかったのよ。それをたった1日で親の心をこしらず." The first part reads like, "It took your father 4 whole days to get to Viridian City," which is essentially what it says in the English voiceover. However, in the second segment, she doesn't say anything about Ash's dad being proud or Ash being the apple of his eye. Instead, she says, "それをたった1日で親の心をこしらず," which literally translates to get there in 1 day, children don't know their parents' hearts, which is a Japanese proverb that is often used to describe how kids, from their perspective as children, can't understand the depth of the love that their parents have for them. That kids can't truly know their parents' feelings for them until they themselves become adults. The saying can be used seriously, but here, Delia says it quite jokingly. Either way though, it gives the conversation a slightly different tone than the English dub. Like she's worried about how gung-ho he is, but also kinda pleased to see him making progress. But most importantly, 1. She appears to be speaking about her own feelings, not Ash's dad's. 2. She never says, "He'll be proud of you," so there's no strong suggestion that Ash's father is going to get wind of this. And 3, there's also no indication that Ash's dad loves him deeply, that he is the apple of his father's eye. The result is a conversation that feels very different in Japanese and English and alters the way that fans perceive Ash's dad as a character. Feeling his downheartedness following the incident with the Sappheiros that resulted in Pikachu getting hurt, she says to Ash, "In times like this, all you can do is push forward. You absolutely will become a Pokemon trainer who surpasses your dad and grandpa. Do your best." Not only does this line bring Ash's grandfather into the equation, but her serious tone as she reassures Ash that he will surpass both his grandfather and his father, is quite interesting. We'll come back to the significance of this later in the video because it is actually connected to some very strong messaging about the intent behind the character of Ash's dad. Intent that has largely been lost in the English materials that flesh out the Pokemon universe. Here I mainly wanted to establish that translations can give different lines very different feelings, and sometimes nuance and even entire pieces of information can be lost when moving from language to language. Anyways, apart from these lines in the anime, there is very little to go on when it comes to information about Ash's dad in the anime itself. And as a result, we have wondered for years when we would hear more about Ash's dad, about what kind of person he turned out to be, and about when he and Ash might be reunited. In the commentary accompanying Entei, the Spell of the Unknown, it was said that we would hear more about Ash's dad in the 5th season of the anime. But alas, the anime is now in its 23rd season, and we still haven't heard anything. At least, not yet. And so for now, all we can do is pick up the crumb trail and follow it until we arrive at the most complete version of the truth that's out there. In order to do so, let's first unwind the web of theories that we mentioned earlier so that we can see past all the red herrings and discover what the intentions behind Ash's character were and perhaps still are. There are countless theories about who Ash's dad is and where he's been for all of these years, but we're going to leave the wild ones like Mr. Mime is Ash's dad on the sidelines and instead tackle the major theories that have the most credibility, breaking them down until there are nothing but the kernels of truth left over. But before we begin, what is your theory about who Ash's dad is? Well, let's jump in and deconstruct these theories. Who is the richest and most appealing gentleman in Pallet Town? Who is the one man we know of who's in constant contact with Delia Ketchum? Has Professor Oak been Ash's dad all along? This is one of the most popular theories for some reason, perhaps simply because it is funny to imagine Professor Oak dipping his dipper in the village soup. Because, I mean, why is Professor Oak always at Ash's house whenever he calls his mum? Isn't that a pretty dad-like thing to be doing? This theory gained a lot of weight with a number of people following episode 18, Beauty and the Beach, which was banned outside of Japan because of the overall weirdness of the beauty contest. But it was during this episode that Ash runs into his mum on a resort holiday with Professor Oak. And I don't know, but how many of your moms go on beach vacations with men other than your dad? Episode 4 of Pokemon Chronicles, Showdown at the Oak Corral, added fuel to the fire when Professor Oak reads a love poem at the end of the episode that the narrator notes Delia seemed to think was meant for her. And heck, even in 2016, Ash gave his mum a call and Oak was over at the house as he curiously always seems to be. However, we can cut this theory down very quickly because although it's very clear that these two are close, the idea that Professor Oak fathered Ash simply doesn't hold any water. It makes no sense for Professor Oak to be living around the Ketchums pretending not to be Ash's father and somehow keeping it a secret from everyone for over a decade. Unless, of course, Ash is an unwanted child born out of wedlock, in which case he would likely want to keep his forays secret to uphold the prestigious Oak family reputation, but even then, in Celebi, Voice of the Forest, we see a younger version of Professor Oak, and he's a pale little boy with brown hair who looks absolutely nothing like Ash in terms of either skin tone or facial features. All this stuff that fans point to with regard to Oak and Delia's close relationship, it simply doesn't do anything to suggest that Oak is actually Ash's dad. If anything, it simply shows that Delia and Professor Oak are two lonely folk who really value each other's companionship and perhaps found a little bit of love later in life. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. In fact, it is quite wonderful. But as far as Oak being Ash's father goes, we can only dismiss this theory on lack of evidence. Bruno, the fighting type Pokemon guru of the Elite Four, a truly strong and determined trainer, and another popular rumor magnet when it comes to the question of who Ash Ketchum's father is. In To Master the Unexpected, Ash is preparing for the Pokemon League conference and wishing he could have the opportunity to train with Bruno after seeing him compete on television. However, Bruno being a superstar trainer makes this seem like nothing more than a pipe dream, and so Misty and Brock quickly talk Ash down from the idea. But then, Ash's mom pops in and says in the English dub, "Mommy knows how." There's a rumor going around that Bruno's secret training spot is someplace on Mount Hideaway. Or in the original Japanese, something more like, "Hey, there is a way. There are people who've seen Bruno of the Elite Four training up on Mount Hideaway." And so the team turn on the hype jets and set out to find Bruno. But fans have raised the question, why exactly is Delia aware of Bruno's whereabouts? And isn't it interesting that Mount Hideaway is so close to Pallet Town? People have linked these 2 points together to suggest that Delia and Bruno are connected somehow, and that perhaps Bruno could be a father figure who left home and never returned, but still keeps an eye on his family from a short distance away. Bruno even appears in the first episode of Pokemon as an intimidating silhouette, which some fans believe could be an indication that Ash is living in his father's, or Bruno's, shadow. And as it turns out, Ash is quite similar to Bruno in many ways, both physically and mentally. Black, spiky hair, they're goofy and quick to jump into action, and of course, they both share a strong love for Pokemon. However, beyond these passing similarities, there's honestly not too much going on here. If Mount Hideaway is close to Pallet Town, then that means it's also reasonably close to Indigo Plateau, which is a much more plausible reason as to why Bruno would choose that location for his training camp. And there's nothing particularly strange about Delia saying that she heard Bruno trains there. I suppose that maybe the English dub makes the line seem a little bit more suggestive, but it's hardly anything to go on. Furthermore, Bruno expresses absolutely no indication of knowing Ash when they meet, and so I think this is another popular theory that simply needs to be dismissed because there is no real evidence. Silver, the old dude with a Chikorita, and another potential candidate who could be Ash's father according to the rumor mill. This one was born out of the Search for Legend episode of the Pokemon Chronicles miniseries, in which we meet Silver, an older trainer bearing a number of similarities to Ash, who, unlike most theorized fathers, at the very least appears to be aware of him, maybe. There's this scene of Silver and Richie sitting near the sea at night, chatting, wherein Richie says, "I get really excited about things, and when I do, I can't think about anything else. It's just like this friend of mine, a Pokemon trainer named Ash." "Ah, Ash?" Silver says. Exactly like that. Many people believe that Silver's surprise here indicates that he knows Ash, and he was caught off guard, perhaps even struck at the sound of his own son's name. But why do fans bother theorizing over this one-episode side character? Ash and Silver actually do bear a number of similarities. Much like Ash, Silver saw a legendary bird in his youth that deeply inspired him. Much like Ash, Silver has an unevolved Pokemon accompanying him outside of its Pokeball, a very cute little Chikorita. And much like Ash, he upholds his own set of morals, refusing to battle Moltres when it isn't in good enough condition for a fair fight. And much like Ash, he leverages the friendship of a powerful flying lizard to overcome some tough situations. There are definitely some parallels between the two characters, and given his age and the fact that he's still in the midst of his Pokemon adventure, he could very well be a figure similar to Brock's father who just isn't ready to come home yet. This is a fun one and more plausible than Bruno or Professor Oak because we don't actually see any of Ash's interactions with Silver, which is what really bursts the balloon with regard to the other two theories, since it's crystal clear that neither Bruno nor Oak recognize Ash as a son. However, there is still hardly anything here to suggest a father-son relationship apart from some passing similarities, so we're going to have to disregard this one as well as we continue to work towards the truth. This one actually has a little bit more substance. 2005 brought us Pokemon, Lucario and the Mystery of Mew, a movie that explored the idea of auras that envelope all living creatures and Lucario's ability to guide and manipulate these auras. It also introduced us to a character who teased the possibility of a very likely connection with Ash, the character known as Sir Aaron. To briefly introduce Sir Aaron, he is a heroic knight who is one day informed by his Lucario of a looming battle between two armies in Kanto. Sealing his Lucario in a staff so that the Pokemon can't follow Sir Aaron to a likely demise, he travels to the conflict site himself. And realizing the only way to preemptively put an end to the catastrophic war, Sir Aaron draws heavily upon his own aura to alter the minds of the two opposing armies and turn their hatred into understanding of one another. He succeeds in making peace between the two armies, but ultimately the toll is too heavy and Sir Aaron passes away into legend. Beyond their willingness to make martyrs out of themselves, there are some things that suggest that Sir Aaron is related to Ash. For instance, they're both from Kanto and they both have black hair. But much more importantly, they seem to share a very similar aura. So similar that Lucario is freed from the staff when Ash takes it into his possession, confusing Lucario and leaving him looking for answers. With an aura so similar, could Ash be a family member of Sir Aaron's? Perhaps even a son? The problem with that idea is that Sir Aaron died about 1,000 years before Ash ever set foot in Cameron Palace, absolutely ruling out the possibility that he's Ash's father, unless there are some unlikely time travel shenanigans going on here. However, there certainly is the possibility that they are related in some way given the resemblance of their auras, and there happens to be a character named Riley who appears in Diamond and Pearl and bears a striking resemblance to Sir Aaron, which could make him a more likely candidate to be Ash's father than Sir Aaron, but there's still really nothing to suggest that that is the case. Sir Aaron, Riley, one or both of them could definitely be related to Ash, but we have to dismiss the idea that one of them could be his father because there is nothing to really back it up. However, one aspect of the Sir Aaron theory does tie into another theory that is much more plausible. Sir Aaron is dead, and while he most certainly is not Ash's father, could Ash's father, whoever he is, already have passed away? One popular theory is that Ash's father died on his journey and was reborn as the Ho-Oh that Ash sees in the very first episode, a man reborn as a Pokemon guardian, somewhat similar to Entei in The Spell of the Unknown. Entei and Latias, who could physically transform into a human in Pokemon Heroes, blurred the line between humans and Pokemon. And so could a deceased father who loved his son who he never really got to know, could he have blurred the line between humans and Pokemon just a little bit more? Could he have taken this a step further and been reborn as a phoenix to look over his family from the skies? The Sinnoh legends suggest that Pokemon and humans were once one and the same, so is it really such a stretch to imagine this situation? It's a charming notion, but in an interview with PokeBeach, the Pokemon anime's original director, Masamitsu Hidaka, stated that Ho-Oh was merely a plot device to get Ash moving and to highlight the fact that he's a very special boy, nothing more. Other death theories have brought forward ideas such as that of Ash's father living on as a ghost in Lavender Town, or have simply suggested that his spirit has already departed from the world. However, many fans regard the idea that Ash's father is already dead as more or less deflated by Memories of the Mist, a Pokemon Sun and Moon anime episode, wherein the crew are exploring Pony Island when they come across that area's guardian, Tapu Fini, who is able to summon the spirits of loved ones who have passed away, and who envelopes the heroes in this mysterious mist that allows them to meet with these departed souls once again. In the mist, Mallow has a tearful reunion with her mother, Hapu meets her grandfather, Lily and Gladion are confused why they don't meet their supposedly late father and have the revelation that he's still alive, and Ash and Torracat meet Stoutland. Ash never sees his father, or any human loved one for that matter. One would suspect that if his dad had already died, he would have appeared to Ash via the Guardian's power, but there is nothing to be seen. Of course, if Ash didn't know his father very well, perhaps Ash's dad isn't even someone who Ash considers to be a loved one, which is sad in itself. But regardless, there's not much to really go on here, and while it's always a possibility, neither Ash nor his mom say anything to suggest that this could be the case. So let's dismiss this one, move on, and deconstruct the most popular theory of all before we move on to the truth. Giovanni, the man behind Team Rocket, the leader of Viridian Gym, the father of Silver. And out of the characters who have turned up in the anime to date, perhaps the most popular theoretical Ash father figure of them all. Tons of fans have put forward their support for a Vader-like twist to the Pokemon anime. That is, that all along the mastermind behind Team Rocket has been Ash's father. So is Giovanni to Ash as Anakin Skywalker is to Luke? Or can we dismiss this along with the other theories? Much of the meat behind this rumor comes from the non-canonical Pokemon Live musical production that had a brief run in the year 2000. It was a joint production between Nintendo, Radio City Entertainment, and 4Kids Entertainment produced in the United States, and it indicates that Delia, Ketchum, and Giovanni actually had a romantic relationship back when she fell in with the wrong crowd around the time that Giovanni was starting Team Rocket. And so we must ask, could Delia have conceived a child with Giovanni back when they were dating? Does Ash know? No, and he mustn't. Is Giovanni Ash's father, something that Delia has kept secret from him for all these years? A number of fans certainly think so based on what was presented in Pokemon Live, but let's look past the memories and the speculation at the actual dialogue. A long time ago, before you were born, before I met your father, I was friends with Giovanni, she says. This seems to suggest that Delia and Giovanni parted ways long before they could have had Ash together. And in an interview with Game Informer 16 years after the final curtains closed on Pokemon Live, the theatrical production's writer, Michael Slade, expressed that he wanted to write Giovanni as Ash's father, but the idea was rejected by 4Kids, and lines were added to the script to indicate that Delia had left Giovanni to be with Ash's biological dad. This seems to squash the case that Giovanni is Ash's father even as far as the offshoot world of Pokemon Live goes. And even if he was written as Ash's father in the musical, Pokemon Live was merely a spin-off handled by the dubbing studio 4Kids and other American entities. It most certainly isn't part of the anime's canon. Not to mention that Ash and Giovanni look nothing alike. Giovanni is initially portrayed in the anime as a man with fairly light brown hair, just as Delia has fairly light brown hair. However, Ash has black hair, and with dark hair being a dominant genetic trait, it seems far more likely that one of Ash's parents would have had dark hair as well. And given their run-ins in the anime, why exactly does Giovanni never express anything that would suggest Ash is his son? Furthermore, if Ash is his son, why doesn't he even consider him as a potential successor to take over Team Rocket? I suppose it is possible that he'd want to keep a child born out of an affair or a youthful fling under wraps, but also under watchful eyes, so perhaps this is the real reason why he expends funds to have his least useful Team Rocket members following Ash all over the place. But if we assume that the regular Pokemon anime reflects the major patterns that are portrayed in the Pokemon Adventures manga, the Pokemon Generations anime, or the special Celebi event in Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, Giovanni actually has a son, Silver, the heir to Team Rocket, who he openly acknowledges and encourages to take over the organization in his stead. The implications of Giovanni being Ash's father are certainly interesting, but there's simply not enough substance there to pull this one out of the realm of speculation, and thus we must dismiss it. However, the next theory, the final theory we're going to take a look at, is a different beast altogether. It's the theory we've been working towards, the one that makes the most narrative sense, and the one with the strongest evidence base to back it up. There is this very typical type of character progression in anime, in manga, in video games, in books, in life. That of a child progressing, maturing, becoming stronger until the one day they take the mantle that their parents or mentors bore over their heads before them. And the developments that unfold when they finally ascend to the level at which they can inherit the role that their parent or mentor had previously filled can take a very different shape depending on the story. Luke, at last overpowering his evil father Darth Vader to save the galaxy, Deku receiving All Might's power and cultivating it as his mentor falls from grace, and perhaps Ash finding his lost long father, the world's most powerful Pokemon trainer. A man shrouded in mystery and defeating him in a climactic battle that concludes Ash's journey in the Pokemon anime. In our hearts, as Pokemon fans, I think we would all love to see this kind of stunning conclusion to the anime. It would be the ultimate way to unveil Ash's father. A legendary lone wolf trainer lurking in the distant mountains, much like Red, waiting for the day Ash comes to challenge him. There are even theories that Red himself is Ash's father, that Ash actually inherited his Pikachu from Red via Professor Oak, hence why it is so strong and wouldn't listen to him at first. Others suggest that Ash's Pokedex previously belonged to Red, and that he'd entrusted both the Pokedex and Pikachu to Professor Oak before deserting his family. Who wouldn't love to see the day when Ash finally finds out his whereabouts, whether his name is Red or something else altogether, and travels across the lands to face him for a chance at overcoming the father who abandoned his family and proving himself as the ultimate Pokemon master. This would be an incredible narrative direction for the series, and fans want it to be true. But the truth may very well be much darker than we'd like. The final theory is this, and it is based on some Japan-only materials that supplement the anime, and it is the closest to the truth of anything we have discussed thus far. The origins of this theory are connected to a man who exerted tremendous influence over the Pokemon anime in its early days, prior to his departure from the anime in 2002 and his tragic passing that was caused by a brain hemorrhage years later. A man who wrote the very first episode of Pokemon, Takeshi Shudo, who was a chief writer of the Pokemon anime from 1997 to 2002, and the writer of the first 3 Pokemon movies. This man, who was largely responsible for starting the Pokemon anime in the form we know and love today, crystallized his original intent for Ash's dad's character in a Japan-only light novel adaptation of the anime known as Pocket Monsters, the animation. The light novel came out in 2 volumes. Volume 1, Departure, which expands on Ash's backstory and the beginning of his adventure, and Volume 2, Friends, which follows his gym battles as they unfold in Pewter, Cerulean, and Vermilion City. Let's just note that future seasons of the anime contradicted certain elements of this adaptation, but later seasons of the anime also contradicted the anime itself, so take that for what you will. As volumes penned by Takeshi Shudo himself during the time when he was heavily involved in the creation of the Pokemon anime, Pocket Monsters the animation holds considerable weight when it comes to the intentions around certain characters and elements of the stories, many of which we may have seen more of in the anime had Takeshi Shudo not left the anime and not tragically passed away a few years later. To dig into the information around Ash's father, I'm just going to paraphrase page 24 to 30 of chapter 1. The night before Ash embarks on his adventure, he can't sleep, and Delia tells him that she understands how he feels. Everyone in town aims to be a Pokemon trainer once they're 10 years old. His father and grandfather as well, and now him. But at the mention of his dad and his grandpa, Ash starts pounding his pillow as if it were a punching bag, recalling a memory from the day he received his first PC back when he was 5 years old. Prior to that day, Delia had always told little Ash that his grandfather and father were surreal trainers, but now that he was getting his own computer and access to the internet, she realizes that she needs to break the truth to him before he finds it out himself. And so, she breaks it to him slowly by pointing out that he'd never seen his father or grandfather in any magazine or any best 10,000 trainers lists, and while that was perfectly normal, seeing as Pokemon Masters aren't featured in these magazines since they don't actually compete in the Pokemon League, well, with a computer and the World Wide Web in his hands, Ash would now be able to look up the World Pokemon Trainer Association's membership list, a list that contains the names of all certified Pokemon trainers, whether they are alive or deceased. And so she then tells 5-year-old Ash that if he searches that list, he won't be able to find his dad or grandpa, because they're not on it. To this day, they still haven't been officially recognized as trainers. Ash responds by asking her what exactly his dad and grandpa are doing these days, to which Delia replies that she doesn't know, but even if they are still aiming to become trainers, their names simply aren't on the list, and the likely case is that, quite simply, they failed. These words, in a sense, rationalize why Ash's father's existence is brushed off by both Delia and Ash in the anime, and why we almost never see or hear of him, and why he never returns to Pallet Town, even though Ash is also a trainer on his quest, and yet finds time to return quite frequently. This is the dad who went away and failed to become something that his family could be proud of, and in his shame, decided to never return home. Takeshi Shudo's clear intentions for the character, coming from his position as a man who played such a prominent role sculpting the Pokemon anime world in its early days, the way that Delia takes a serious tone when she assures Ash that he will surpass his grandfather and father in the anime's Japanese script, the simple logic behind it all that explains why Ash's dad has been missing for so many years. These things give weight to his characterization of Ash's dad that the other theories lack. And as much as it would be wonderful in a sense to find out that Ash's dad is a world-celebrated trainer, we simply never hear anything along those lines. Why does no one in the Pokemon training world know the name Ketchum? And moreover, if he was a living legend, why does he never return home? Why would he abandon his son entirely? On the other hand, if he did set out to be the very best, and he put everything on the line, and he failed, and his dreams came crashing down on him, now that would be an understandable reason to never come home. But even if we assume that this is the unfortunate way that things turned out for Ash's dad, as seems to be suggested in Takeshi Shudo's writings, the question still remains. At some point, will he find peace with his own failure and return to Delia and Ash? Or will Ash seek him out and find him? Or will he simply disappear off the face of the earth, lingering on as an eternal phantom of our imaginations? In the PokeBeach interview mentioned earlier, the original director of the Pokemon anime, Masamitsu Hidaka, who has also worked as a storyboard artist on later shows, told us that Ash's father may appear if the writers feel a need to grow Ash as a character, and that indeed there is a possibility that one day he will appear. But perhaps more interesting than the official answer that we hope to receive in the anime one day is the realm of possibilities, the speculation, and the fan theories. The lingering question, who is Ash's father? It's a question that will continue to fire up the gears of discussion online for as long as he remains a mystery. Who is Ash's father? Today, we have come as close to the truth as possible with the information at our disposal. Ash's dad is not Professor Oak, not Bruno, not Sir Aaron or Riley, not a Ho-Ho, not Silver, not Giovanni, but a man, regardless of whether or not he is the greatest trainer who ever lived or a complete failure. A man who, for some reason, remains off the books with a reason for never coming home to his family. And so, when it comes to the question of who is Ash's father, there is only one truth. Ash's father is still out there, somewhere. And whether or not a more detailed version of the truth is out there with him somewhere, only time will tell.